invite Wendy to come on up and just share with us.
He's feeling very nervous. Where are you, Jojo? Where's he hiding? Come on up. He's stayed out just to do this for me before he heads out into his group. So, come on. So, this is my little friend, and I've asked him to read what we're looking at in Luke today, because we're looking at when Jesus was 12. And for me, I think of Jesus as all the paintings look, some white old guy with long hair, which is so wrong. And I wanted you today to get into the story and actually picture someone who was the same age. So, you all right? You ready? The blue one. Oh yeah, he might need a microphone. He has a loud voice, but do you want me to hold it? Yeah.
Every year, his parents went to the Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the feast according to the custom. After the feast was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been actually searching for you." "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor of God and men.
Thank you. Okay, so hopefully you've lodged an image of what Jesus was looking like, okay? None of this old man with long hair, okay? We've got 12-year-old Jesus in the story today. And I was thinking about this story and thinking, have I ever misplaced anything? And for those of you who know me really well, like Ollie, he will be laughing now because I lose everything all the time. Like, I'm always like, where have I put this? And I was thinking about films at Christmas. And if I put this picture up, it's an iconic Christmas film, isn't it? But Kevin goes missing, not only once, but twice. And then another actor in 3 and 4 and so on. But there's this scene, isn't there, where they're sort of counting the heads and they're all rushing to the airport. They're on the plane and the mum sits down like, I've made it. We're on our holiday. And then you get this zoom in on her face and she's like, Kevin! And I kind of think, is this a bit like the story of Mary here, okay? You know, she's lost Jesus, not just her son, but like the Son of God. The Son of God has gone missing. What's going on? And if you're like me and Mary and you've ever lost anything, misplaced something, then you can imagine all the emotions Mary's feeling in this chapter. She's worried. What's happened to him? Where's he gone? Why isn't he here? What's happened? Slight bit of anger. How dare he not be here? Why didn't he follow me? You know, all those emotions. Maybe a bit of blame, guilt. It's not my fault. It's his fault. It's her fault. And all that stuff pulls in because she's lost Jesus. Jesus has been misplaced. Where has he gone? And I've read this in between, like, you know, the birth of Jesus. We're like, oh yeah, I like this story. We read this and we skip on to like Jesus and his life sharing and doing all these amazing miracles. And I've missed this bit, and I never read it before, but in that bit that we've just read, Jesus wasn't just lost for a couple of hours, but 3 days. That's a lot to process. 3 days. That's like the whole weekend plus a day. 3 days. Like, mind blown. Where did Jesus sleep? Like, was he in the temple for 3 days? Did someone feed him? Was he doing a 3-day fast? Like, where was Jesus? And we don't ever find out when we look at the story, do we? We just hear that he was missing for 3 days. And we know that somehow, within this crazy story, God looked after him. But I would love to unpick, come on then, Jesus, where were you? Did someone take you home? Did you get fed well? Did someone look after you? Did you just sleep in the temple? Like, where was Jesus? Why did he go for 3 days? And then I started thinking, what is the point of this story? So we've had the birth of Jesus, we had baby Jesus in a manger. We're all like, yeah, I get that, I understand why that's important. And then the next part of the chapter, after this story, is all about Jesus starting to share his good news, starting to do these amazing miracles. And then we've just got this little tiny bit, 11, 12 verses of the teenage Jesus. Jesus when he's 12. So what's the point? It doesn't really say much. It's not much of a story. How are we going to unpick this? And what made me really aware of how precious this story is, it's the only words, the first words Jesus says as a teenager, but the first words he says. We don't find out, like a precious mum, Mary starts writing down his first words. What was it? Was it mama, dada? Like, what was his first words? We don't know what his first words were. We don't know how funny he found jokes. We were talking about the other day. Did Jesus make jokes? What were the funny jokes he did when he went to school? Or what was he up to? Was he mischievous? And did he have fun with his friends? We don't know. But these are the first words that we find out Jesus spoke. So there's got to be some weight in them. There's got to be something that the writers of the Bible are wanting us to unfold and discover. And actually, these words start setting a scene of who Jesus is, his identity, and where the story next goes. And there's a little subheading, which we'll start unpacking shortly. This is the last time that Joseph is mentioned in the Bible. So up until now, it's been Mary and Joseph, Mary and Joseph. And that's it. After this story of Joseph in the temple, we don't see Joseph anymore. And I'd like to tell you I found out what reason why, but there's lots of different theories out there, and I decided to leave it as a I don't know. So this was the last time that we hear of Joseph. And I'm just thinking, Jesus is 12 now, so I wanted to understand what a 12-year-old at Passover looked like. What does this mean? And Israelites at the time, it's sort of like they're coming of age when they hit 13. They became something called the sons of law. They became a full member of the synagogue. So he's just a year before his big opening of like his bar mitzvah, this is me coming in. And when he was at Passover, it was sort of culturally acceptable that the year before, it's like a big year. He might have been given a little bit of, you decide which meat we use, or would you like to read this? So it was a real honour and a real special Passover for Jesus, because he was coming of age as an Israelite to have that bit more responsibility. And when I thought of Passover, I had a little Google, I found this picture. And this is my image from, doing kids' work and stuff. It's nice, calm. Oh yeah, look at that view. So tranquil, so peaceful. But when you actually read about what Passover was, this is the best picture I could find. It's more like chaos. Thousands of people are flocking, family, animals, all coming into Jerusalem, all to be part of this 7-day festival. You can imagine how easy it was for people to lose people. It wasn't a nice, calm meal when I can't believe Jesus has gone missing. There were people everywhere. There were markets, there were trade-offs, there were big kids looking after little kids. They were all running around having this amazing time in Jerusalem, all coming together for the same purpose. And within all of this, you can imagine, this is obviously a modern day market. I don't know what they were selling back then, but you can imagine all the smells and all the food and all the fun that was going on. We find Jesus not outside of all his friends having fun, kicking a ball, doing all this, but we find Jesus in the temple. And it took them 3 days to walk back to Nazareth. And I was kind of trying to understand, how would you start walking back and leave Jesus in the temple? How could that happen? It's obviously really busy in Passover, but how have we gone from Passover and then gone back to Nazareth, and we've lost Jesus. And actually, people were quite nervous walking. It's like a long, long walk. You wouldn't just go on your own. You would go as a big pack called a caravan. And this is like a modern-day caravan with refugees, actually, that I found. But they would all go together because there's safety in numbers. So it says that they all walked back to Nazareth. And what was really interesting is there was sort of like an order of where people went in their caravan walking back. At the front, you had all the women and the young children. And at the back, you had the men and you had the grown-up boys and the teenagers. Now, I don't know, because the Bible doesn't say, but I started thinking, maybe this is why they took so long to realize Jesus was missing. Because he was in that limbo. He wasn't quite the 13-year-old coming of age, but he also wasn't the little kid. So maybe Mary's up the front with all the young kids and the mums, and they're all having their walk, and Joseph's at the back with all the teenagers, and maybe they both thought, oh, he's got Jesus, she's got Jesus. And maybe that's why it took so long with so many people in this march. They're all walking together. Oh, yeah, Jesus at the front. Oh, yeah, Jesus at the back. And then word gets back, and suddenly everyone's like, where is Jesus? Well, he's not with me. And you could just imagine the scenario. Like, if it was Ollie and myself, I know there would have been a bit of blame going on. Well, I thought he was with you. What do you mean he's not with you? Of course, he's nearly a man. Of course he'll be back with you. And Ollie, well, of course, wouldn't argue back. He'd be very nice. But maybe he might say, well, I think he's still too young. I thought he was going to be with you. But you can see why suddenly 3 days doesn't sound so crazy. Because in the culture, with all the people all walking back to Nazareth, you can just imagine someone thinks someone's there. It's even worse than the story in Home Alone when she just counts some other random kid's head and thinks Kevin's in the car. There's more people. There was an easier chance that she could have lost him. But you can imagine, I can imagine Mary. She's a young girl, lost her son, panicking a little bit, and then you're suddenly realizing he's not in your pack, and you've got to walk back 3 days, or however many days it was that they started walking and started back. You've got to start walking. Your feet are tired. You've had enough. You were thinking, I can't wait to get back home and just put my feet up and I'm done now. Suddenly, she's got to pack her bag, think, have I got enough food and drink and everything? And she's starting to walk back. She's getting quite frustrated, I can imagine. And they find Jesus in the temple. And if we think back to so far, we've had two Sundays about Mary. And she's had an amazing time, hasn't she? Amazing experiences with God. She's encountered the angel Gabriel. She's had a virgin birth. But this is 12 years on. And I was thinking now, she doesn't know where Jesus is. She's got no one reassuring her. There's no star hanging over the temple saying, he's here. She's on her own. She's surrounded by a load of people who don't know where Jesus is, and probably everyone going, wow, last time I saw him. She's getting mixed signals, mixed communication. She doesn't know where he is. And for 12 years, she's probably over the time started forgetting all the amazing things that started in her life. Because for 12 years, skin's in the game. Her DNA's in the game. She's raised this son, and he maybe has the same nose as her. Maybe they both laugh as the sheep run past on the field. I don't know. But for 12 years, she's looked after this little boy, and it's her little boy. And it's suddenly like she's remembering, oh, he isn't just my little boy. That angel Gabriel, that virgin birth, all of that was really special. That brought him back. And so she's going back and she's really worried. Where is Jesus? Where is he, this precious cargo? And my first little throwaway thought today really is how easy is that to just forget? We've all had those amazing moments where we became a Christian. Jesus broke into our life, or we had a prophetic word, met powerfully with the Holy Spirit, something radical done, I got healed, or something like that, and we are like, whoa, that's so good. And then 12 years later, I don't know, we're not even with God sometimes, we're a bit miserable, we've forgotten everything. It's so easy, isn't it, just to have an amazing encounter. Maybe you've seen an angel, had an amazing dream, but that was 12 years ago. And I think the first thing I want us to challenge on today is just how easy it is to get comfortable, how easy it is to just forget what we're really here for, rather than the real purpose of what we're doing. It is easy to lose Jesus in our life sometimes. So we finally get the meet together. Mary finds Jesus in the temple. And we could kind of see Jesus as a bit of a disobedient son. Like, as a mum, I'm thinking, how dare Jesus? Like, he's just left Mary for 3 days. If that was my son, I'd be so angry. Like, the worry he's caused me, how could he do that? Or maybe you think Jesus is a bit of a daydreamer, sort of just wandering around and didn't realize the whole of the Nazareth group had left and he's just sitting there enjoying the word in the temple. But actually, we kind of read the story and we start understanding that he's not this disobedient person. And even the first conversation, so the first words of Jesus, he says, "Why would you look for me anywhere else? Didn't you know I would be here in my Father's home? That's where a son should be." And if we don't understand the whole bigger picture, that can seem really rude. Like, what? Like, Mary's been worried sick. She's just found you, and you're kind of telling her, well, I should be here. Like, what's your problem? Again, if it wasn't Jesus, we have a different story on our hands. We might have to deal with something there. But isn't it interesting that even Jesus, that's 12-year-old flesh, man, boy thing, Jesus must be in his Father's house. He must be. That's what he says. I must be in my Father's house. And Mary's still wrestling with this, remembering who he is. She's sort of like, but your father and I, meaning Joseph, whereas Jesus is talking about his father being the Son of God. And a Christian guy called William Barclay says, see how very gently but very definitely, Jesus takes the name Father from Joseph and gives it to God. So I don't know where Joseph is, what happens next with him. But as I've read this passage, I think I've just been personally really just blown away by the transition. 1 minute we had Joseph, his earthly father, and we're getting ready as readers, preparing ourselves to realize that Jesus is the Son of God and that actually his father is God, not earthly Joseph. So this shows us this real unique relationship and necessity of being in his Father's house. And another little thing that just blew me away as I read this passage is, what was Jesus learning about? Well, it was Passover. He was learning about the blood of the Lamb. And when we think about that, Jesus is the blood of the Lamb. He's learning about something that when he gets to 33 is going to happen. He is going to be the blood of the Lamb. Like, he's learning about something that he is. The humility in that, the humbleness of Jesus to sit there and learn, knowing that he is going to take all sins on himself. He is going to be the blood that is the Lamb for all of us. And I think in life, we can all put our hands up. We struggle with adversities, agony, distress. We can become angry. We can feel like Mary many times. And even when she found Jesus, he didn't run into her arms. He just told her he was supposed to be here. This is his Father's house. And sometimes we go through seasons, don't we, and things where we're like, this isn't supposed to happen. Or I wasn't expecting this. This wasn't what I was expecting. And we kind of want God to explain his reasons. Like, tell me now, why is this going on? And just like Mary, she would have wanted to know, Jesus, why didn't you come? Why didn't you notice we were all leaving for Nazareth? When we said, Jesus, why didn't you come? Why are you still here? And he probably didn't answer all those questions because that wasn't what it was going on about. But actually, we need to realize in those times in our life when those things trial us and catch us out, that we've got to know that God's always got this plan. Jesus always knew that he needed to be in his Father's house. He always knew. And we need to submit to his will, not our will, even when it can bring pain. It can bring 3-day searches, can bring painful feet as we walk back, time wasted, money costs, physical costs. We need to always choose that it's God's will. And after this bit of the story, it just jumps to something else. Whereas for me, I kind of want to know what happens next. Was Jesus kind of like walking like this on the way home? Or was he like golden yellow, like, wow, I've just had this amazing time in the temple? I don't know. We don't know whether Jesus, Mary and Joseph forgave him straight away or whether they had a grudge for a while. We don't know what happened next. But we do know that Mary knew that Jesus, she got reminded of who he was. Because it says that he grew in wisdom and stature and favor with men and God. They obviously carried on raising him. He submitted to his earthly mother and father, and it was good because that's where it ended up. And as a mum, I've got a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I feel like I'm on the other side of kids now, and I'm starting to have that inner wrestle thinking about the next years to come. Like there's one element of me that I'm like, yes, go and do these amazing gap years, go over to The Hague, go and do this, go and do amazing things for Jesus. And then the other part, I'm like, don't leave me, like I need you, I love you, I want to protect you, I want to look after you. And I can feel Mary's wrestle where she knows, like Sophie said last week about the bread. Jesus was the bread, the thing that was needed to be shared. And actually, when we get given things, we know that in part it's ours, but we also need to give it and allow and trust God with it as well, which is hard sometimes. So just my last point, really, that I've really been thinking about this week is we haven't got this rude, disobedient child. We've actually got Jesus, who knew who he was. He was fulfilling his purpose on earth as the Son of God. And I've just been thinking about the 3 days. And I thought, I wonder if there's any, like Martin always talks about the different numbers in the Bible. And I was just like, when are 3 days happening again? And then I thought, wow, this is not the only time that Mary's going to lose Jesus for 3 days. We jump to when Jesus is 33. And he says those words on the cross, it is finished. And maybe, just maybe, God was preparing Mary for that season. Maybe in God's love and kindness, he knew, but cry now, he knew that she was going to have to let go of her son for 3 days, for the greater good, for the blood of the Lamb, for every single one of us here today to stand before our living God, holy and blameless because of the blood of God, because of the blood of Christ. And isn't that powerful? You just think, we've got this story, just a little 11 lines in this story in Luke. But wow, 3 days. And what happens in 3 days at the end, we'll find out in a couple of weeks. But, we know, don't we? We know what happens next. But in case you don't, that's a cliffhanger. But I just feel like I was trying to work out how to land this preach today. And we started off with Jesus born in a manger, of a virgin birth, coming to earth as human flesh. The Christmas story, the purpose of the Christmas story. And then we look at Mary and this incredible virgin and how she fed him, how she raised him, how he learned to walk and settle at night. He was really like a real baby. He wasn't a robot or anything, he was real. And yet we've got this story here of Jesus growing up, and then he grows up again. Sorry. And when we look at the difference at Jesus' death on the cross, hang on. And his followers at the time thought, oh my gosh, he's lost. We've lost Jesus again. But that time was different. And in Romans 8, it tells us that nothing can separate us from the love of God. So I just want us to, the band's going to come up. I've asked them to sing this song. And I just want us to think about, have we lost Jesus in our life? Especially with all the shopping, the tinsel, the lights. Sometimes Christmas can be very much not about Jesus. And sometimes it can be about baby Jesus in a manger and not about Jesus, real and active and living in your life. We forget that the boy who was in the manger is the same Jesus who died on a cross, took away all our mistakes, and then rose again. So just like Mary, as she pondered on this, just got the band to do this song that we'll know. It's a Christmassy song. But Pippa came home from kids' work last week singing this. And I think I had a new revelation of what this song meant to me. I think it wasn't just a carol that I've heard, but it was Mary just looking at Jesus, but then seeing the whole Christmas story, not just Jesus in a manger, not just Jesus when he's 12 years old, but the whole story. He always knew his purpose. He knew he needed to be in his Father's home.